Hello, Alyssa.
Hello, Brian.
It's you were off last week from the podcast. Happy to have you back.
I know. I missed it.
All right.
Happy
We
Monday.
missed you too. It's Monday. We had a great show today. We had Senator John Fetterman on, and he's been on a bunch of times. He's not often in. This is the first time he sat at the table with him.
Second.
Okay.
But I love. It's so much better to have him in person.
Of course.
It's just you connect with him more. It's a better conversation. I hate remotes if we can avoid them.
Well, what were your takeaways from our time with him?
So I've said it before. I was wrong about Fetterman because I was critical of him. I didn't like that he didn't dress up in the Senate. I wasn't sure who he was going to be and if he was going to be more lefty than I thought. And I think he is so common sense. He's middle of the road. He's still a Democrat on the core issues, but I like that he doesn't seem to start with like, this is the party's position, so therefore I'm there. It's more, what is common sense? And for the voters who elected me in Pennsylvania, because he's just as much a senator for the Republicans who didn't vote for him as he is for the Democrats. So I enjoy his takes and his open mind on things. Even something I hadn't heard him say before is that he didn't actually agree with the Trump conviction in the civil fraud case in New York, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't heard him say that publicly.
One of the things that Senator Fetterman said he was going to do is kind of pick his battles with Trump and not get upset over every single thing he does. You agree with that tactic because you also have talked to me backstage and on the show about the fact that you think Trump tries to get people upset to kind of muddy the water a little bit.
I couldn't agree with this more, and for a few reasons. Trump is not brilliant, but he is strategic, and he is intentionally throwing so much out there at such a pace that he overwhelms people, and it almost becomes harder to focus on some really important issues because there's 5 other things that happened. Luckily, the court struck down his decision on trying to overturn birthright citizenship, but I was arguing at the time that should be a massive front page headline that should get as much attention as January 6th pardons, which is also terrible because that impacts a lot of people's lives. And he does it knowing that if he kind of floods the zone with so much stuff people have to go after, it ends up being scattershot and they can't, in a strategic, cohesive way, argue the merits of any individual point. But I also have said there are things he's going to do that I agree with. I 100% believe that if you are in this country unlawfully and you've committed a crime, you should be deported. Obama agreed with that. Biden largely agreed with that.
Our table mostly agrees with that.
I was surprised to hear most of the table does. That I'm okay with and I'm good with as long as it's done responsibly, humanely. And that's something that also 87% of Americans agree with. So I like to choose the battles on the things that really matter. Something I was passionate about and we lost on was Pete Hegseth's nomination. I think the role is too important to give it to someone who I think is very, very underqualified for the role. There will be others. I have huge concerns with RFK at HHS and with Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. And by the way, something I don't talk about a lot on this show, I talk to senators all the time, Republican and Democrats. Ahead of these confirmation hearings, I had a number of conversations expressing my concerns about Hegseth. I've also talked to the senators about ones I totally support, like Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, John Ratcliffe at CIA. So for me, it's like, where can you use your voice in a way that actually has an impact? Otherwise, people are just going to, spiral and exhaust themselves. But I also think your voice has less weight if you attack everything he does.
Well, this is kind of what Fetterman's talking about, too. And I think the reaction from the Democrats has been almost hostile towards John Fetterman in a lot of ways, at least the Democrats on the further left side of it. And this is something I think you might be experiencing a little bit too, because like, for instance, you just now said Trump is not brilliant, but he's strategic.
People would get really mad at that quote.
People get mad at this stuff. And it's something we've talked about a little bit since Trump got elected. But have you felt a shift in the way people are feeling about you on the left since Trump's election?
Yeah. I think, listen, my goal, and I was clear-eyed about it, was I wanted to raise awareness of why I thought he was dangerous and reckless to have as president. And then the American people spoke and he won. So rather than just repeat the same warnings that I said for 4 years and clearly didn't break through in a huge way, I want to be targeted on the things that I think truly mattered. And I also believe he's the American president, and I'm going to give him grace on things that I think he might be doing right. I've talked about, I love that he worked with Biden on this hostage deal. I love that there are American hostages that are home because of the work Trump and Biden did. I'm going to praise that. I'm not going to be incapable of saying that somebody I dislike or think isn't a good president is capable of doing something good. And I try not to let people's like with this show, you have to be careful how much you internalize of what viewers say and what people on social media say. But I would challenge anyone to go through everything I've said since I've been on this show and tell me where I've been inconsistent, because I've always been for securing the border. I've always been for releasing hostages. I've always been for a free market-based economy, all the things that I've talked about now. And I now have stronger critiques of Democrats because I'm frustrated that we're back in this position I didn't want to be in, of Donald Trump being president. And I believe,
blame them for some of that.
Yes, because I believe I did everything in my power to not be in this position. And I do put a lot of blame at the feet of Democrats. Of course, Republicans. I don't know a Republican who calls Republicans out more than I do. Like, of course, we've made a moral compromise in supporting him. But I think Democrats need to look inward too. And I don't personally, intellectually understand not getting the outcome you wanted and were fighting for, and then not looking inside and analyzing, like, what could I do different and better next time? And so that's a lot of what I'm doing. What was I missing? What did I not connect with voters?
It's something we've talked about on the show a lot in the last couple of weeks about what Democrats missed, what they could do. We even had the guys from Pod Save America on Friday, and I would be lying if I said they didn't make a lot of the points that you've been making on the show, and these are some pretty lefty
seasoned Democrats, and also good friends of mine. When I was coming up in D.C., they were like the cool guys who worked for Obama, and we'd be arguing with them and challenging everything he was doing from Capitol Hill. But that was the fun era of politics, where we could all get beers afterward and be friends and not hate each other.
Right.
But I would note that there are a lot of Democrats who have agreed with some of the points I've made, and I think that if folks want to get back to a place where we have a really like healthy functioning two-party system that's not just one side trying to own the other, it's okay to like be self-reflective of what your own party could do differently.
Right. And praising something that the Republicans accomplished doesn't change intellectually what you've been saying.
Correct. And yeah.
Because you have always been a Republican.
I'm still a Republican. Yeah. I don't know why anyone would be surprised that my positions are Republican when they have been the entirety of the time I've been on the show.
To clear up the things I'm seeing online, are you secretly trying to get into the Trump administration?
Okay, there would have been a much easier path to go about that than the route I took. No, and everyone thinks I secretly voted for Trump. It would have been a lot easier for me and better if I had just said that and come out, not made the most powerful man on the planet want to come after me. But you know what I will say, and I'll keep this, you and I have talked about privately, I'll keep this kind of minimal. I am talking to people in the Trump White House. And if there's ever something that I think is worthwhile to share on the show, I would. But I think it's important because I do know a lot of them. If they can get me clarity on things, or if there's something I see that I'm really worried about that they're doing, that I have that open line to say, you may not listen to me, but I do want to raise this concern. That's important to me, and I'd rather have that than not.
No, communication is important, honestly.
Yeah. There's some who are never going to pick up my phone call, and that's fine, too.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, well, speaking of...
like one thing.
Yeah.
I'm dying to get numbers on the deportations that are taking place, and my understanding is we'll get them from DHS within a week, but how many of these migrants have actually committed crimes in the country? I think that would help a lot of people who are in the center or the left of this country that are really worried that this is just a rounding up of everyone to know what the offenses are and who's being prioritized. And so my understanding is those numbers will be coming.
I'm very interested in seeing those numbers too. All right. So Trump's cabinet picks, we referred to them a moment ago. They've started to get confirmed. And this is, again, things are happening so quickly. I mean, if you had asked me throughout the weekend what we were talking about Monday morning,
I would have,
it was 4 different things. Yeah. He's firing the IGs.
I know, we didn't even get to that.
No, and the Hegseth confirmation. But he got the votes he needed. It took the vice president to break the tie. Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr.'s hearings are this week. Do you think this is going to be easy for them? Do you think they're going to get confirmed? What do you think is going to happen?
My instinct is both will get confirmed, but I actually think Tulsi Gabbard has a little more of an uphill battle. There are she does have support of at least one Democrat, but there are a number of Republicans who seem to have major concerns with her. Surprisingly, I've heard with RFK that there's a number of Democratic senators who are kind of open to hearing from him, and I think it's because not the dangerous anti-vax rhetoric that he's had, but that he's talks about taking on the pharmaceutical lobby. And they see that as somebody they could have as an ally. But I think a lot's going to come from what the actual grilling in the Senate entails and what how either of them are able to answer some of their more damaging positions or past statements. With Tulsi Gabbard, one that I think is really challenging, like I've got my issues meeting with Assad, normalizing somebody who is responsible for the deaths of countless Syrians.
Gassing his own people.
Gassing his own people. I mean, he a barbaric terrorist that she just decided to meet with. But she also was very critical of Trump's decision to assassinate Qasem Soleimani, which I think was a brave, righteous decision that made the world a safer place. I'd argue it was one of the best moments of his first-term foreign policy, and that's a universally held position with most Republicans. So I think that's even something she could get challenged on. That is not a popular take, that we should have left a terrorist leader who is responsible for the deaths of Americans on the battlefield. So they're both going to face some challenges. Can I say one thing we missed over the weekend that I'm absolutely outraged over?
Yeah.
Because again, I'm still going to call balls and strikes with Trump. Taking away the security details of Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and Tony Fauci. Every one of those men are people I know personally, I know to be patriots, and people who serve their country in various capacities. And the reason that Pompeo and Bolton needed them is because they carried out Trump administration policy to carry out the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, and their lives are now they now have prices on their heads by the Iranians.
Right.
That is so reckless and so dangerous. America should stand by American officials who carry out our foreign policy. And Dr. Fauci, this one just outrages me. A, because he's my friend, he is 82 years old, and he's a public health professional. But to folks on the right who have come after him and saying, he's the reason I had to watch my grandparents die from outside a window, or the reason my kids were out of school. No, that was either the policy of Donald Trump, the president, or your government, or your governor or mayor. Tony Fauci did not make policy. He was an advisor. And so take your critique up with who was responsible for it. Do not make public health professionals your target. It is such a dangerous and reckless situation that we're in. And I hope that is something I don't think it'd be well received, but I would raise to the White House, because it is very dangerous, the game that they're playing, taking that security away from them.
I even heard Lindsey Graham, of all people, saying that
I appreciated that.
It's going to be a problem for getting people to take these jobs, knowing that they're going to be left out in the cold later. I mean, it's scary.
Oh, I was at the Pentagon the day that we carried out the strike on Soleimani, and we knew we were fundamentally changing the history of the relationship between the U.S. and Iran, but I stand by the fact that it was the right move, but we need to protect people who made the order.
You just mentioned you worked in the White House communications team. You headed it up. What do you think of the new White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt? Is that my saying right?
Leavitt.
Yeah. And what do you think will be her biggest hurdles?
So she worked, I oversaw the comms department. Kayleigh McEnany oversaw the press shop. She worked under Kayleigh, so I know her well. I wish her luck in the role. It's an incredibly challenging one. There's a difference. To succeed in the eyes of Trump requires loyalty to him, never questioning or second guessing him, and making sure you're giving the talking points and facts that he wants you to give. At times, that's going to be at odds with your own information that's been put in front of you. One of the most challenging days that I didn't know until much after the fact, I was briefing on the White House, like we call it Pebble Beach, but where the sticks are or whatever during COVID. And I was asked about Trump's COVID tests. It was right before the first presidential debate with Biden, and if he tested positive or negative for COVID. And I said, I think I actually said that he'd tested negative because that's the information that had been given to me. And it was a year later that the former White House chief of staff wrote a book and admitted that I guess he tested positive. So I by default lied, despite not having that information. So that's a challenge she'll encounter. She's got a good team around her. There's some smart people there. And I think they would be smart to model what the Biden White House did, where Karine was the primary briefer, but then they brought in Admiral Kirby to talk about foreign policy and national security. You need somebody really seasoned to talk about those issues. And I have a feeling they will do that, or have Mike Waltz.
She's very young for the job.
Yes, yeah. She's very young, Granite State native. But I think she'll need to supplement some of the her briefings by bringing in outside experts. But I wish her nothing but the best. Hopefully
she'll come on here. Who is in your opinion, who was the most effective first-term Trump press secretary?
It's a good question. Easily Sarah Sanders.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
And listen,
although Sean Spicer gave us some moments, and
I mean, we will always have SNL. Sarah's also, I mean, Sarah's very seasoned. She'd been a longtime campaign spokesperson. She'd grown up in politics and she knew policy, but she knew how to throw a punch. And that's what Donald Trump wants. I think that she's the model, I think, of what he looks for in a press secretary.
Now governor of Arkansas.
And now governor, it worked out well for her.
All right.
I would love to have her on the show.
Yeah, I would too. She's been on before.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is she's working on a bipartisan initiative with Governor Andy Beshear that we'd be interested in talking about related to TikTok and kids' mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to some lighter topics. It is official. Travis Kelce's team, the Kansas City Chiefs, will be matching
Taylor
up.
Swift's boyfriend's team?
Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team will be matching up against the Philadelphia Eagles in this year's Super Bowl. Where do you stand on the Taylor Swift relationship now, a year or two in here? Because in the beginning, you were skeptical.
I was a little skeptical. I thought it was a bit of a rebound. I think they're going to go all the way.
Yeah.
I do. I think they seem happy. They're 2 years in now. So I saw this stat online that of the games that Taylor has attended, the Chiefs have won more than 80% of the time.
That's true.
So I'm just saying, mathematically speaking, she is a huge value added.
She's not a
to the
jinx.
team. She's not a jinx. Those are good odds to go.
They did win Super Bowls before she came around. But
my
yes,
husband snapped at me yesterday because we were watching the game, and I'm like, sure, I'll tune in for Taylor's fashion. But and I was like, I mean, it's just the best thing that's ever happened to him that he's dating Taylor Swift. My husband was like, he was a remarkable player before.
Hall of Famer without Taylor Swift, yes. But
so mad.
That being said, the Kelce brand is bigger now than it was before.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
And I also just think it does make the Super Bowl more fun.
Yes.
All my DC friends were so sad that the Commanders lost, but I watched I watched all the games yesterday.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Do you know who Josh Allen's engaged to?
No.
Haley Steinfeld.
Oh, I did know
That's
that.
right.
Yes.
So, we've got it.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a lot going on now
Yeah.
with pop culture and football combining.
Exactly.
All right. So I enjoyed the football, as I always do. And as we've talked about
Does
a little
Heather
bit.
watch with you or no?
No, Heather wants nothing to do with it. My daughters want nothing to do with it. I beg them. I've tried to teach them. I've sat with them. Even Super Bowl, the commercials, they want nothing to do with it. It's really heartbreaking for me. I sit alone in my basement and watch the games. But
I do find that I like it when I pay attention and know enough to be invested. You get kind of the same rush you get in politics of like, wait, what's going to happen? Like the not knowing is actually very exciting.
It's such a release for me. It has nothing to do with the show, which I appreciate. And I just dive in, and it's the happiest I ever am. It's going to be very hard for me once the Super Bowl's over and there's no football till September. I don't know what my weekends are going to be. Let me footnote that. It's the happiest I ever am without involving my daughters or my wife or any of those things. Thank you, control room, for that, for the waved hands. But as we've talked about, I enjoy a little bit of the legal gambling. Which is legal here in New York, and I bet on some games. I did pretty well this weekend. I'm not a degenerate, but I enjoy it. Every time I bring this up, you kind of cringe a little bit, and I get the impression that you have some experience maybe with gambling in your dating history.
Oh, I sure do.
Tell me about this.
Okay, I've never gambled in my life, and I stand by it. I love having money enough to not want to part with it
Understood.
unless it's having something else nice. But no, as I've said before, every guy I dated in my 20s was pretty much an absolute hot mess, and I was as well in the relationship until I met my husband. Then suddenly it was like, oh, like lights, angels, and suddenly I became an adult in a relationship and decided to date an adult. But yeah, I had a very serious ex-boyfriend who I didn't realize for a solid year and a half into our relationship that he was a huge sports gambler. And I was wondering kind of why, like, guys get upset when their team loses.
Sure.
But he had these like irrational, over the top, like forlorn, needed to go home from the bar when we're out with friends, like can't talk about it after a game. And eventually a friend of his shared with me that he was a big time gambler and oftentimes was gambling with like more than he really could afford to lose. And that was contributing to a deal breaker in the relationship, because the way I see it, I don't personally gamble, but you do it with a set amount and you have a cap on it. You have to basically
100%.
be fine parting with that money. If it's going to like break your spirit, you're going to be down for days, you're going to be stressed over the money that you like gambled away, don't go near it. And that was like eye-opening to me, because I really was like, this guy is too into football. Like, it is weird, but it was because he was
It's a whole culture.
often losing money on it.
I have a text chain of friends where like we just do nothing but send each other ideas for bets and things like that, and it's fun and it's social and all that kind of stuff.
I'm kind of surprised my husband never got into it, because I feel like he would and would be good at it.
It sounds like you're not that observant, though. It's
That's
possible.
true.
It's possible he is
He
into
probably
it, and you have no
right?
idea. You might just be missing it. No, I enjoy it quite a bit. And of course, I'm always very reasonable and careful and all those things. And I'm not betting the mortgage, but it's
that's
a lot
the
of
key
fun.
is the cap. Like if you want, it's your, and I also believe in relationships, you should each have your own spending money. So like if Justin were to gamble, which he really doesn't, I wouldn't be mad. Or like if he goes on a golf trip and spends a lot of money, I don't need to be mad because that's his spending money.
Right.
And then if I buy a new handbag, he doesn't need to be mad because that was my spending money.
My wife did not enjoy gambling until our honeymoon, where she played a little blackjack. She thought it was like the biggest waste. I would never throw money away, put $20 down on the table and it's gone when you get bad cards. She won on our honeymoon. Now loves playing cards, loves gambling. She's like a better poker player than I am. It's
my grandma liked cards.
Yeah.
So maybe I think I would try like a casino. I would never get into like sports or the online stuff, but I feel like if you go to Vegas, maybe you have
when we
to
went to the Bahamas a couple of years ago, nothing to do with the show, but in our spare time, Whoopi gave lessons. It was a lot of fun. Although she said Sonny was a jinx and brought the table down. So I don't know. All right, let's talk about Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag.
Oh, I've been wanting to.
I know you have, and I'm here for you. And for once, I know these references.
Right? Yeah.
This is not Real Housewives. This is. I'm old enough to remember the old stuff. So they became famous on The Hills, the reality show. They are back in the news again because their house burned down in the LA fires, which is horrible. And it's become a big story because Spencer's been on TikTok asking people to support his family by helping to get Heidi's latest song to the top of the iTunes music charts. Everyone from Flavor Flav to Paris Hilton has posted for them. Spencer was like a villain on The Hills, for those who don't know this. What do you make about how much support and love he's getting now?
I'm obsessed with this story because what like reality TV couple, if you had to guess, would have gone the distance? I would not have said Spencer and Heidi.
No,
like that they were so tumultuous. They were quite toxic. Nobody liked Spencer Pratt. Like absolutely no one did. And I was like an original like The Hills fan, and like even seeing her relationship with Lauren break over them and all that was hard. But they've gone the distance. They've got their kids. They've got their life. I think that the X factor with them is two things. They're both kind of brilliant marketers, even if it's sometimes like bizarre and a little weird. Like they get people's attention.
He created the villain persona in a way that benefited him.
It benefited him. And then the songs, well, maybe not the most musically gifted. They're kind of bops.
Okay, well, there you go.
Everyone is posting them on Instagram. A lot of the housewives are too. And I'm like, it kind of works. Like, I think this is what we need in this moment. Everyone's a little sad. 2025 got off to a weird start. Like, fires, things happening everywhere. And like, what is it? Is Superstar the big one? What is it called? But like, they're super catchy. So it works because it's not like, you wouldn't get the reference, but like Sheena from Vanderpump, like her songs were not great, so it didn't catch on. But like these are kind of fun songs.
All right, I get that. I still enjoy say like not great songs, but who is it? Hilary Duff.
Hilary Duff.
Hilary Duff.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Love Hilary Duff.
Love
music.
Hilary Duff.
Yeah.
Like, is it musically genius? No. Love me some Hilary Duff.
Put it up any time.
Also, the celebrity of she's the celebrity of my generation who aged like a fine wine. Like, totally unproblematic as a person, looks healthy, gorgeous, like better than ever.
There you go. And
so being non-problematic gets you far in life.
I'm with you.
Also, my favorite Heidi Montag memory is it's one of like the reboots of The Hills. She goes to pour a glass of wine and it's already like a giant glass and literally pours it to the very rim and like walks out. I just remember being like, that's not how you pour wine, but I respect it.
There you go. I worked with Spencer and Heidi a couple times when I was at Letterman, and I enjoyed Heidi quite a bit. Spencer was fine. They got in like a couple of like arguments backstage and stuff.
Oh, good. So like, that's what I would want from them.
It was exactly what you want. It felt like the show was taping even when it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see that they've stayed together.
Well, and I do want to mention too, like I think a lot of people think of the LA fires and all these big time celebrities with second homes and all this money. And there is certainly that, but there's a lot of people, there's a lot of working class, just run of the mill people who lost homes. But even people like, I think reality stars, we don't realize a lot of them have not made like lifelong money. They've not necessarily made enough to lose a home and be able to come back from it. And I think there's actually a point of need here. And I think it's great that people are showing them support and helping them out. They do have kids and like they need to be able to, pay their bills, get their house rebuilt, and like I think it's cute that people showed up for him.
He is also Spencer's feuding with Alex Cooper, who's the host of Call Your Daddy.
Like a dumb choice.
Yes, he famously stormed out of the podcast during an interview 2 years ago, and he got over that, but now he's mad again because Alex is refusing to post Heidi's song. What do you make of this?
Okay, there are literally like 2 fights in the podcast world you don't pick, and it's Alex Cooper and Joe Rogan.
Sure.
Although Joy did pick the
Yeah,
Joe
we
Joe
picked a few
Rogan
Joe
fight.
Rogan ones. Yeah.
But I'm also convinced they'd like each other if they like had
Joe Rogan and
drink.
Joy? I can see that.
I
Yeah.
totally could see
I think
it.
that. Yeah.
It'll be like George Bush, where she'll refuse to because she would like him.
Yeah.
That's not a good fight to pick, but he should just recognize there's been enough love. Like, yeah, I literally saw someone else huge posted her song like in the last 24 hours.
Well, Alex eventually posted it, but Spencer thought it was too little too late at that point. So I agree. There's not really a lot of upside there.
He hasn't changed a bit, it sounds like.
No. That being said, we'd love to have you on the show.
Please come on the show.
Come on by. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining me today, Alyssa. Tomorrow, I'll be back with Joy Behar. We'll talk about her unlikely possible friendship with Joe Rogan. Maybe. Who knows?
Do.
We'll see you then.